All right, so this is John Thomas, GOP Strategist. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on the network. I'm not sure if you were watching what just happened there, but we were praying and all that kind of stuff. And, it's just the way it goes sometimes here on Right Side. But you're here to join us to talk about the Texas redistricting angle. Can you give us, how sometimes you go into the bookstore and it says Idiot's Guide for, can you give us the Idiot's Guide for what's going on, that 30,000 foot view in Texas right now?
Sure. Well, it's going to be hard to beat your last segment, but I will try.
No, it's totally cool. And if you want to pray, let's pray. You know what I mean? But go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so at a high level, what's going on is something of pretty big significance, both to Texans, as I am one, and as well as the rest of the United States. What's going on right now is the Texas legislature was holding their special session to vote on a bunch of bills. One of the things they were voting on was redistricting House lines in the state of Texas. Now, that may sound pretty mundane to the average viewer. It's of huge importance for a couple reasons. One is that shifting migration patterns over the last several years from blue states in large part to red states like Texas have caused Texas to swell with population and population shift. So Greg Abbott and the Texas legislature said, we're going to redraw the lines to more fairly represent the total number of Texans and the communities as they line out. That happened to be advantage to Republicans, upwards of 4 to 5 seats. Now, you may say, well, that's not that big of a deal. That is a huge deal, Matthew, because if you look at the House of Representatives in Washington, Republicans have such slim majorities that adding a few extra Republican seats could save Republicans in the midterms or allow them to run up the score, which allows them to drive President Trump's agenda in the second half of his term, etc. So Democrats understood this, and instead of just taking the L and voting in opposition to this new redistricting plan, as well as other very good bills that were going to benefit Texans, instead of doing their duty, Matthew, to vote, these Democrats have fled the state for places like Chicago, New York, to huddle with their blue state governors to skip the vote. Now, the reason that's important is because the state legislators in Texas cannot hold a vote unless they have quorum, which is a certain number of legislators. So consequently, these Democrats are derelict of their duty. Greg Abbott has said what they're doing is not only derelict, but also on the verge of criminal in some potential places. And so now Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, have put out an order to the Texas Guard to say, go find those Democrats, bring them back, and if they don't come back, Greg Abbott has said he is going to remove, under his authority, these Texas Democrats from the state legislature from their seats entirely and appoint placeholders in the meantime.
That's so wild. I saw that yesterday, that letter from Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas. I mean, have you seen something like this ever happen before where Democrats are leaving their state that they're supposed to represent? And then can you talk to us, do you know about the law specifically where can they be arrested for something like this? It looks like they can be.
Sure. So Democrats have tried this in Texas once before in 2021. They were unsuccessful in their stunt, and they still lost the vote. So it didn't work. They're trying to do it more in mass this go around, in part because this could really tilt Republicans nationally in their favor. And so Democrats, instead of representing Texans, they're representing their Democrat Party bosses and trying to stop Republicans at all turns. Well, here's the thing, Matthew. When you're an elected official, you have a duty to vote. If you choose not to vote, unless you are ill or have some legitimate excuse, you are derelict of your duty. The laws that Governor Abbott has cited are opinions issued by prior attorney generals and courts that say if you willingly obstruct the business of the Texas legislature and purposely skip out on votes, that means you can be removed from office. That is within the authority now of the governor. On the criminal side, what some of these Democrats thought they were doing to get around that law that I just cited is they are saying they're out fundraising in other states, which is total nonsense. That's not what they're doing. They're tweeting and TikToking about how they're stopping the Republican vote. So that's not what they're doing. But the criminal component is Greg Abbott said, if you are raising, there is a law that says if you are raising money and soliciting funds and directly obstructing the business of the Texas legislature as a result, knowingly doing that, that could have criminal violations.
Man.
So look, I have to applaud Ken Paxton and Governor Greg Abbott for not laying down on this. This is important on the myriad of bills, but truthfully, Matthew, it is very important that all Texans are fairly represented. And for the upcoming midterm cycle, this is incredibly important because Republicans need the full representation that we deserve.
100%. I hear you on that. And thanks for giving us and bringing us up to speed on what's happening there in the Lone Star State. Before I let you go, John, can you talk to us about you personally in the sense of why you got involved in being a strategist for the GOP? Like, what was it for you that said, you know what, I want to speak out about what's going on out there?
Sure. Well, I started actually as about 12 years old. I started as a volunteer. I got bitten by the bug, and I remember it very vividly. When I learned, I was watching C-SPAN at the time. That was the only non-fake news out there at the time that just gave a raw feed of the congressional floor. And I remember understanding, I had been talking to my parents about it, and I had even talked to my local representative at the time. And I remembered understanding at this point that there was a stark difference between liberals and conservatives, in that conservatives believed in personal choice, personal freedom, and personal responsibility. And the Democrats thought that government was the solution to everything, and that government knew better than we did to control our lives. And I remember at that point, I turned to my parents and I said, I have to volunteer to help my congressional member who was a Republican get reelected. Everything's at stake. The difference then to me was stark, Matthew. But in the last, 20, 30 years, it has become so unfathomably deep between the two parties that the Democratic Party of the 1980s and 1990s is almost unrecognizable to the Democratic Party today, and how far woke that they've gone. It is verging on socialism and communism, and they don't even pretend that that's not the case. So I've been in the fight for my whole adult life, and it is a fight because the Democrats play dirty. They weaponize these three-letter agencies, as we saw, not just against Donald Trump, but as we saw today, they weaponize the banks against their citizens. It's been a great journey, but one that we all can't quit because the Democrats will do anything in the pursuit of raw power so they can control our lives.
I do think part of it, the reason why they're so, I was going to use the word addicted to, their religion of, power and control and money and less freedoms and all that is partly because they don't really have a belief in God, or most of them don't, or they might say they do, but they really don't. And then for all of us on the other side of the coin, we're kind of like, hey, we were brought up in the United States. Everything's been really easy and really free, and we love that, and we're used to that, and that will never, ever go away. Is that part of why you think it's time to wait?
I totally agree. They don't have a moral compass. They really don't have. It's whatever the latest thing is to feel good about themselves. And then there's also an air of arrogance in the elite. And the elite really are Democrats, and they believe that they know better than you and I of how to raise our families, how to spend our money. They know what's good for us, whether it's, taking 8 vaccine jabs in our arm because even if it's untested because they say so. It's really also about control. And I think more deeply rooted, it really comes from a lot of their childhood, which is, my parents always told me they were rooted deeply in morality and a sense of personal responsibility, and that if I fail, it's because I have autonomy over my future. I both own my successes and my failures. And we have personal responsibility. And if we want to change our circumstance, we can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and work hard. And in America, we can succeed. Whereas Democrats are different. They believe that if you, Matthew, achieve success on your show, it wasn't because of you. It was because the village, the government allowed you to succeed. It wasn't that you made smart choices and that you were an active member of your church and your community and were a good person and worked hard. It was that the government allowed you to succeed. And I think that from a young childhood really trickles all the way up. That they want more power and more power to tell us, the idiot masses, of what we're able to do and not do.
That's perfectly put. That's what's happening, unfortunately, in other countries. Not all other countries, but a number of them. We could probably name some of them.
Yes.
And that's why we, made it too big to rig in 24, because we wanted to save our country. We want to have that Constitution, not only for this 3.5 years, but moving forward past this. Because if the right thing doesn't get done, specifically when it comes to holding people accountable, then what makes it stop from having someone else 50 times worse than Harris and Biden?
That's 100%. And you can really, it's not just about Harris and Biden. That's why I think what Representative Comer is doing is so incredibly important. Everybody's fixated on, Biden and did he know about the pardons? And he probably didn't. And the legality of whether or not those pardons were legal because the auto pen. That actually is the least interesting part of the story, Matthew. The interesting part is, what did his staff know and when did they know it? Because the staff, Anita Dunn's and all of these, they're going to go in the next Democratic administration or the next Democratic senator's office. And if it isn't about covering up for a Democrat's mental decline, it will be the ends justify the means. So the American people need to know what those staffers knew, when they knew it, and what they did. And those people have to be held accountable. Number one, so they can't serve in office again as a staffer. And number two, the American people need to know the ruthlessness, the shamelessness of the Democratic Party and their operatives. So when we go into the next midterm or presidential cycle, they're able to make an informed decision when they're being gaslighted by the Democrats and the mainstream media about how bad Republicans are and how good Democrats are. They know the truth, and they can make a decision for themselves.
Exactly. John Thomas, GOP strategist from Texas, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on a number of topics there. Looking forward to having you on the show again. John, thank you again.